Hello, and welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Lamore. Today, my guest is the co-founder of Momotaro Apotheca, a company that offers organic and cruelty-free vulvovaginal products that aim to treat infection and just general overall irritation without interfering with your pH balance, hormones, pheromones, and medication. What a treasure. Please welcome my guest, Lindsay Wynn. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Michelle. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here and, once again, to be talking about all things vaginal wellness.
Yes, it's so good. I love talking about this stuff because, like I said, no one talks about it. So, how did you get into this line of work? Tell us a little bit about how you arrived here.
Yeah, totally. So, a little bit of my background, I found myself here kind of accidentally, to be quite honest. I was a photographer in the beauty space for a very long time, about 10 years, and found myself midway through a career and my late 20s, all of a sudden experiencing new vulvovaginal irritation. Like many other people, I had had some reproductive complications throughout my 20s, the introduction of an IUD, a few other things that just made me susceptible to things like yeast infections, bacterial vaginosis, etc. And then I kind of had this big life trigger. And again, this is something people don't really talk about, but I had a new sexual partner and we had sex somewhere we shouldn't have, in a hot spring. Highly do not recommend for vulva health purposes. And I had an infection that I could not get rid of. And it became not only recurrent, but more painful and led to other quality of life issues. The BV turned into the yeast infection, which turned into a kidney infection, which turned into just tons of inflammation and irritation and again, overall quality of life issue that I couldn't fix. Medication was making it worse. The doctors weren't helping. And myself and my now business partner were like, we can do this better. Everything that I had tried up until that point seemed to be exacerbating the problem. And, we could go deep down into why that is, but I wanted something that was natural and more gentle. And that's just what happened to work for me. Again, vaginal wellness isn't one size fits all, but that was kind of the precipice of how we got here and why we started Momotaro, was based on my own experience.
Yeah, and all good things I find happen accidentally. It's like everything that I've ever done, including the show, is a total accident.
Totally.
Yeah, so, but it's good, to respond to the things in your own life and discover that, what, if you're having these issues and other people might be struggling with these issues too, and really have nowhere to turn. So, you created this way to take care of yourself and thereby taking care of other people. But I want to back up and just go over, you mentioned vaginosis and BV. So can you talk a little bit more about what those things are?
Yeah, so actually bacterial vaginosis and BV are the same thing. It's, a pH imbalance and an overgrowth of bacteria, which can result in a lot of different types of symptoms. So a lot of people associate BV with kind of the fishy odor that people get, itchiness, inflammation, kind of a clear discharge, can feel a little bit watery. This can happen for from a lot of different things. It can happen cyclically, month over month, with changes in your hormone balance. It can happen with the introduction of an IUD or, semen irritation from chemicals that live on condoms, things like that. There's a lot of different things that BV can be attributed to. A yeast infection, again, is the overgrowth of the yeast bacteria. And again, that's more associated with the white chunky discharge, and kind of that smell of yeast and often a lot of inflammation, irritation, and itching. So, these things often can play off of one another too, based on changes in pH level, depending on what you're eating, what your sexual activities, new partners may be. And they're very common, like incredibly common. 1 in 3 people with vulvas at any given time has bacterial vaginosis. 60%, 60 to 70% of people will have a yeast infection of their life in their life, 40 to 50% of those people having them recurrently. And so the statistics are really, you know, obvious. This happens to everybody, but nobody talks about it. And that's, I too also think, just the tip of the iceberg in terms of vulvovaginal irritation, infection, and disorders that people experience. That doesn't even touch postpartum care, menopause, things like that. And we found that, like, these conversations, it's a lot of wells that lead to the same river. So one person has experienced something that may have been caused by another, that may trigger another thing. And like myself, a lot of times I feel like people are not finding the right care or able to have the right conversations surrounding their body parts, or the issues that they're experiencing. And a lot of that's because there isn't a ton of people, one, doing this work. Science around the vulva and vagina started much later than the penis. So it's new, quite frankly, comparatively, if you will.
Yeah, and there's also so much shame just surrounding issues like that, and so many people just suffer in silence because they're embarrassed and they can't make that phone call to the doctor, and maybe their doctor is not really going to provide that level of care that they really need, and ask the right questions and really work to get to the bottom of things. Because I think a lot of women, especially dealing with doctors, I mean, you get kind of brushed off. What you're seeing isn't real. You're crazy. These symptoms aren't anything to worry about. Brush it off. And they go on for months and months and months with these issues that just get more exacerbated.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think people realize how much of a quality of life issue it is. So when I say that, I mean, and it speaks to the fact that there's so much shame around this, is that you are uncomfortable. You are self-conscious. It affects the things that you are or are not able to do in your daily life. So whether that's having sex, feeling comfortable in whatever underwear you're wearing, like itching out, outside the comfort of your own home, and constantly thinking about that affects how we're able to work and walk and exist in the world day to day. And nobody wants that, especially when we all have sexual parts. We all have different experiences and changes, whether, again, it starts at puberty and, goes up into menopause. Like, these are very common and universally experienced issues. And the shame thing is such a big part of it. That was such a huge thing for us when we started this company, is like, oh, do I want to be the person that's going to put my vagina on blast? Like, not really, but like, at the end of the day, like, talking about this stuff is incredibly helpful because so many people experience it, and giving people that agency to talk about it, whether it's with themselves, a friend, a romantic partner, and even their doctors, is really important.
Yeah, and you mentioned just going through your daily life. If something's off in your body, it makes it really difficult just to function, right? To go to work, or to, back when we used to go out for dinner or whatever. If your back is hurting you, chances are all you're doing is thinking about your back.
Yeah.
But if the vulva is burning and itching and so uncomfortable, I mean, how are you supposed to just function in doing, simple tasks, much less try to have sex, or a sexual relationship with yourself or a partner?
Yeah, and our sexual experience and our sexual wellness is so inherently connected to our emotional well-being. And that should be considered, right? Like, you could go out to dinner and talk all day about, like, your hurt back, but, like, you're not gonna be like, oh my God, my vagina's on fire right now and I don't know what to do about it. Like, people are like, oh my God, mine too. I mean, granted, my friend group maybe now would be very comfortable with that, but, like, it's not commonplace by any means.
Right. Yeah, and also, there's so many other products out there that are just aimed at our shame, and that are really not healthy for us at all, and really do fuck with our pH balance and our hormones, and are actually really detrimental to our overall health, but our vulvovaginal health in particular, using chemicals and scents and, all these things that we don't need. And we're being told that we're dirty or we smell, or, there's
Yes.
something wrong with us.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that that is not a part of your brand. That is something that when I saw, I was like, oh, this is so beautiful and so refreshing. And I haven't seen anything like that before. So, how do you sort of navigate that negative world of vaginal and sexual wellness?
Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting, right? Like, it's, there's so many ways you can address sexual health and sexual wellness. And that can be like the antiquated femme care. And that's like, when you think about that's like douching, or like these, really intense soaps that talk about, like you said, like masking odors and like making you feel dirty. And so there's that. And then there's like sexual health and condoms. And, I always tell this story about, like, I was 16 and went to Planned Parenthood, and they gave me a mint chocolate chip lube. And I'm like, what? Am I supposed to smell like mint chocolate chip? Am I supposed to eat it? Like, what am I doing with this? And so there's so many things that touch this type of space and misinform oftentimes our expectations of our body and what they should smell, feel like, and how we should talk about them. And I think that's kind of just baseline where we need to start. What is our body doing? What are the words we're using? Like, what are we calling it, right? Are we saying hoo-ha? Are we saying vagina or vulva or labia or clitoris? Like, understanding that, I think, is really important. And there is a lot of pushback because people don't have the experience to talk about these things. And there's, again, this broad spectrum of how and where people are coming in from their own perspective to these places and what they're bringing to the table there, right? Like, well, I know I just am worried most about my wellness, but some people might not have that experience. They might be thinking about their sexual exploration. And so they're thinking more about the fun aspects. So if we can find a common ground and everybody can agree that, like, what we want is respect, what we want is kind of global understanding of our bodies, and that's from pleasure to pain to the medical issues we experience, then you can, like, go off and have fun and understand and bring more to the table. But I think baseline, yeah, there's just a lot of misinformation. Definitely hard to go against, especially as we were talking about before. Like, the internet is constantly censoring us because we're using these anatomically correct words and we're centering pleasure, next to medical issues. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's not straightforward, but it's I think it's the game changer, right? Like, let's start with a sexual re-education. Let's start with baseline understanding of our bodies and our needs. And that includes all of those things: sexual health, sexual wellness, sexual pleasure, anatomy, the long lineage of how we got here in this space, whether it's, white supremacy and racism, all of the things end up affecting this part of the sexual health space, and our lives inherently.
Right. Yeah. And going back to what did you call it? I grew up calling it my China.
How elegant.
I know. So I had Mimi's on top and I had China on the bottom. I don't know where that stuff came from, but I do remember when I learned that panda bears came from China, I was freaked out.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
That's like an early stork story that you're like, wait a second, the China and huh, and like, you're probably like very confusing, but also partially enlightening. That's so funny. And you know what? No shame to people that want to use other words. It's just about meeting people where they're at and at least being able to express that there's a bigger picture here, right? Like, we used all sorts of words growing up. Oh my gosh, my dad was not politically correct in any way and would use all sorts of stuff that is not okay to say. And so misogynistic. He was a fantastic human being. He just had no idea. And I even catch myself using fun words or wanting to make plays on these things occasionally. But as a company, we're just, we're really trying to show up for the people. And then they can take that and do what they want with it.
Right. Yes. So we were talking earlier before we hit record here about all the censorship that we are experiencing on social media and how to navigate that. And it really does seem like it's unfair and doesn't really make sense who is being affected by this stuff. You know, if I post a picture in my lingerie, I'm getting in trouble, but Victoria's Secret or Agent Provocateur or Playboy aren't touched. So, where is the line and how do we navigate this and figure this out? It's something that I've been racking my brain on for months, maybe years, and it's just getting worse. So, how is that going to affect you getting your word out to the people that need it?
Gosh, well, I think it sucks because the line is invented. The line is not a real line that like people are like that makes sense. Like you said, Victoria's Secret can do it, but the independent sex worker cannot. And it's quite frankly, it's bullshit. It's these large companies that are governing our bodies, and this is nothing new. Whether it's legislation or Facebook saying we can do this or we can't do that. It's truly just unfair. And that's really the bottom line. And so when I think about, and if there's small content creators or sex workers or people who work in the same space as us, like I think diversifying is important, which sucks because we're also so committed. I mean, I'm bound to our platform in some regard because it's where our largest audience is, because this is where we've gone to create information and create community in the sexual health space, which has been really beautiful. But now, you're kind of like, I need this, but I don't want it. But, and so you're stuck. So, one thing I think people can do is use your voice. Talk to people. Talk about these issues. Talk to your friends. Stop hiding behind the screen. We like to do guerrilla campaigns, and that means, we'll wheat paste stuff all over the city to start having these conversations and instigating more thought around sexual health and wellness. And granted, that's not necessarily accessible to everybody, but, what is it that you can do outside of the internet silo that becomes helpful for your own mental, emotional, or professional health, right? I do think there's a lot of people out there right now that are willing to help small businesses. It's not enough. Even thinking about sex workers were specifically excluded from the CARES Act earlier this year. And that's not fair. And so the long goal and the larger, the bigger picture is getting people to understand and use professional sex workers of small platforms, large platforms, to create better legislation and rules around these spaces so they honor everybody's needs. And not to use this, but instead of the white man sitting in the room making up shit that he doesn't know or understand is going to affect these people and livelihoods of people like yourself and myself and the communities we support. Find groups, find communities. Let's all get out there ahead of time. And talk about these things and band together. We've seen a lot of people make change this year by signing petitions and things like that. And, everybody has their different journey with activism, but do what you can is my best advice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we definitely are stronger together, and, coming together and aligning with people with your same values, maybe has a better chance of amplifying your voice and getting heard and getting seen. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, and this is a hard one, and we work with a lot of doctors and naturopaths. Talk to your doctors too. I feel like people are like, oh, my doctor, just like we were saying before, writes me off. Broaden the scope of the conversation you're having and being like, this is something that matters to me. I want to talk about my sexual health, and find other places and platforms and people that wouldn't maybe normally listen and start to talk to them, places where you wouldn't show up. It is important to create community, and it is important to band together, but if you've got the strength or the ability, find the person that doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean it's always hard to make that first step, but really once you do, I mean it opens the doors to so many other opportunities. And yes, it's so scary to be vulnerable and open up and talk about things that you might be embarrassed about, but I always teach my classes that vulnerability is strength, and you coming out and talking about your BV has led you
Yeah.
here to this great community and has opened up so many doors for you. And like you said, do you want to put your vagina on blast? Like, well, no, that was probably scary to do, but in doing that, you're serving the greater good.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that vulnerability is strength, and we wouldn't be anywhere without, the community and the collaborators that we have in Momotaro talking about their experiences. One thing we do is use first person education to talk about the issues we care about. And that could be something like, a nuanced disorder like lichen sclerosis. So, yeah.
I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah, not
And
apparently not that nuanced either. I feel like a lot of people have it. My mom saw it written on my laptop somewhere, and she's like, "What do you? What's going on? I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do some education on it." She's like, "Oh, I have that." I was like, "I work in sexual health, and how did I never know this?" Or so it's that, or it's STI disclosures, or all of we do a ton of LGBTQ education as well, things like that, and like that's people talking about what they're experiencing, and it's been invaluable to us in expanding our community and learning, and of course, most importantly, unlearning the biases we have in these spaces.
yeah, I remember the first time the lichen sclerosis happened, and I also have autoimmune issues. I have alopecia, and
Mhm.
lichen sclerosis is really linked to autoimmune
Yeah.
issues. And I had no idea what was happening. I was just on fire. It was horrible. And I had to get a biopsy and all that stuff. And, turns out it's lichen sclerosis. And they gave me some steroid to help it. And I have had little bouts here and there, definitely stress related, I think.
Yep. Of
Yeah.
course.
But I was happy to find your products because they're so much more soothing. And I don't like using steroids. I don't really take a lot of medication. And so I always try to go the more natural, holistic route if I can.
Mhm.
So let's talk about your products because you have quite a few beautiful um, products happening. So let's talk about what they are and how to use them and when you might want to use them.
Totally. And I'll start just to like bounce off of what you had just said about like nat one, the natural products, two, you had to take steroid cream for the lichen sclerosis, which is very common. And three, that yeah, like often you would prefer to use the natural route. And so that's that's also part of our story, right? Like again, vaginal wellness is not one size fits all. If you get the kidney infection, you have to take the antibiotics. Like Western medicine has done incredible things for our bodies and our health, and there's absolutely always a place for it in my mind and oftentimes in my body. But for people who experience vulvovaginal related discomfort, there's also a lot of in between there. Steroid cream can be very intense, even topically on the skin, and you might want some things to protect it. You might be having endometriosis or PCOS and different symptoms in it that are causing inflammation and irritation, or on medications that are causing that. And you want something else, and you don't want to just mask it with something else. And so that's really where we come in, right? Is that we are addressing these symptoms of sometimes larger issues, sometimes just general discomfort, and that there is a natural option. And oftentimes because these things happen recurrently, and we're so in tune with our sexual health, right? It's a very sensitive area. You feel those things real quick. I wake up after having like 5 cocktails and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna get a yeast infection today. And I take the salve and know that I'm like, don't have to wait to my infection point to go to my doctor and get a fluconazole. I know how to prevent it now. And it's a lot of things, drinking water, etc. But
Yeah, but it's
so
also just being in tune enough with your body to know the signs. And, like you said, if you have a lot of cocktails, you know that you might be leaning towards an infection, but
yeah.
you're looking for the signs. You're in tune with that.
Yeah, or like, yeah, penetrative sex was a trigger for me for a while that like after I had penetrative sex, I'd be like, oh, I need to use this because micro tearing is always a trigger for me. And then it not only helped my physical symptoms and discomfort, but it helped the like psychosomatic mental disorder or whatever associated with these experiences that I wanted to enjoy but couldn't because I would be so stressed about the onset of an infection. Um,
I do enjoy the salve for that, for like after some heavy duty sex.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really nice
whatever.
because I definitely do experience tears and they're not comfortable, but the salve is really nice just to calm it down a little bit.
Yeah, and you know those our products can come in at any stage, right? You might be exploring size play and new toys and tearing there. You might be having a sexual debut and doing something new for the first time with penetration, or doing something with the anus for the first time. These are all things that like these products come in handy for. But I guess to then circle back what you said, the whole suite of products is meant to address lots of different issues, right? We started with the salve, which we've obviously talked about a lot, which was the first product that we really created to help my particular issues, which were bacterial vaginosis and yeast, really truly recurrent yeast infections after that, for about 6 months nonstop. And every ingredient was chosen very specifically. Each ingredient has an intro in vitro study that's linked back to clinical trials around bacterial vaginosis and the issues we addressed, as well as additional things that were like, why don't these things exist in sexual care products? So echinacea can be used topically. You put it in your body to help keep you healthy. You can put it on cuts to help keep them healthy. Micro tearing makes sense. Other things like calendula for soothing. The tea tree and the Oregon grape have berberine, which are those, really heavy hitting ingredients that are addressing the BV and the yeast infections. And so we started there and we wanted something that was multi-use, something that was also kind of like elegant and I could have on my counter that didn't say like, basically like, yes, my vagina's fucked up and I'm trying to address it, because the industry itself had so many like poorly named products that made me think I was dirty and gross. So, we wanted to create something beautiful and inclusive that like I wasn't ashamed of, that I could throw in my gym bag, that I could take with me on vacation and that I could use anywhere, that I didn't have to like, insert a yogurt filled tampon up my vagina or like lay with like my leg up and do like a tea tree vulva mask. Like that stuff is not sustainable for the modern person. So, we made this like pot of salve. And it just kind of grew from there. I had a lot of irritation with soaps and baths and stuff like that. I love the bathhouse. Like in Brooklyn, I was going to, if anybody knows, Spa 88 a lot. And it's like a very sweaty place. And, I wanted to have something that was light and I could put on my body after. And so we developed this topical oil because, whether I was shaving or waxing or something, I was getting irritation there. And then again, sitting in like a warm bath when I would get home or something like that, I didn't want to put really chemical and heavily fragrant soaps in the bath. And so again, this became a supplement to that, or I guess a replacement really. And then to evolve from there, we have a water-based hydrosol that goes in the gym bag for when you don't want like that viscous, oily feeling. We've since added a sublingual oral supplement that addresses cramping, discomfort, and anxiety that actually does have hemp in it as well. And then let's see, we have a probiotic that addresses and has clinicals around gut, vaginal, and immune health. Our vaginal microbiome and our gut microbiome are inherently connected. So that's a really important thing, I think, for people to realize as well, that what you put in your mouth ends up affecting your vaginal microbiome, essentially, which is why those drinks always become problematic.
Right.
And just the addition of sugar. So yeah, we really are trying to develop a holistic approach around vulvovaginal care because everybody is so different. And we really want to find an answer and a product suite for everybody, from menopause to puberty to sexual exploration, things like that.
Yes. Well, that's really great and leads me to my next question because you also run Oceana, which is a sexual wellness products line. And you sent me the sex oil, which is incredible. I love it. It's
Yeah.
CBD, CBG based,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It is the best. It's not necessarily a lube, it's more like a massage oil. But yeah, super effective. I've used other CBD kind of massage oils in the past, but this far surpasses anything else that I've used. So kudos to you.
Yes. I have some family that has been in the cannabis space for a long time. Um, and we always were close proximity to that, being that we are manufactured in Oregon. Adding hemp to our products was always something we were curious about. So Oshihana was originally a THC brand that still exists, but because of legislation and state by state regulations, it is only available in Oregon. And we initially started Momotaro and started then diving into testing CBD and THC and CBG. And we initially tested this group of around 40 self-identifying women. It was like a retreat, and it was mostly older people who were going, focused on women's issues. This was, again, their language, not ours. And a lot of them had gone through menopause or chemotherapy, radiation, and they had used these products. And the reviews we got back from it were like, holy shit, this is the wettest I've ever been. And a lot of that comes from THC products and CBG are vasodilators. So that means your blood vessels are opening, providing new, fresh oxygenation, which can help with sensation and healing and all of these really wonderful, beautiful things. And we're like, oh my gosh, we have to pursue this. It has to be, really carefully thought out. We were really lucky to have incredible partners and manufacturers who helped us really focus on bioavailability, which is why when you're like, oh, your products, like, they're very different and they are awesome because there's so much out there, especially with the explosion of the CBD space. So many people just like throwing cannabis into a product and not really understanding why or how it's working. And so there's only a certain amount of CBD, CBG, and THC that your body will absorb at any given time, right? Depending on how much is in the product, how you're consuming it, etc. And so we really paid mind to that, so that we weren't just trying to sell, again, like a snake oil or something that wasn't going to work or make it really expensive. The goal is that this product is going to enhance your sex life in some way. And so Oshihana is more focused on pre, during, and post-play sexual care. It's fun, it's sexy, it adds to the conversation. Like, you put that CBG oil on, or sorry, CBD, and like, you're and people refer to it as foreplay, but like, it has an activation period, right? 20 minutes. So you're starting, you're having conversations, and you're introducing something into partnered play potentially, and you're creating more sensation and more conversation and hopefully better transparency and authenticity with these experiences. Because again, our conversations around sex and sex acts specifically, I think, are also really misguided because of expectation and because of misinformation around what our body should or shouldn't be doing. Like, people with vulvas, like, you have to be wet right away. Like, that's not a thing for everybody, and it takes time. And so Oshihana really focuses on those elements, the pleasure and self-pleasure, and again, pre, during, and post-play care, because those are all very real.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
And
right?
yeah, I did. I just used the bath salts the other day. I shot a video in there for my fan club, and I was like,
Ah,
I'll just put some bath salts in there while I'm doing it and kind of see how this goes. And I was feeling really good after that bath, like really just kind of high and I don't know, floaty. But something that I loved about that, which I didn't know was a part of it, but they kind of have this little shimmer, glittery bio glitz.
BioGlitz,
Yeah.
yes. And
I
so,
was, what is that? It's so nice. Like, it makes your skin looks great.
yeah, it's, so the CBD and CBG products were developed after COVID, right? Dispensaries closed. We couldn't service this big audience, and people were home and having sex and needing and wanting to feel joy. And so we added these two products on. We had already been developing them, and then we're like, okay, we need to get this out right now.
What's
And well, and the glitter soak. So that's a collaboration. BioGlitz is actually a company. which is really cool. Their glitter is made of plant cellulose, because everybody's seen the bath products that like, are like purple, green, and this and that, and it's like your bathtub's stained and your skin is stained, and I inherently like glitter. I like gold. I'm like, I want something shiny and pretty, but I want something that is always, most importantly, body safe. So since it's plant cellulose, it's not going to clog your drains. It's not going to make your bath all dirty. If anything, you'll have a little gold shimmer, which I think is beautiful, and some that remains on the skin. It won't cut you, which is awesome, and like, why not give yourself something like, yeah, you're having that body high, you're feeling really elevated, you're looking, in this like pretty shiny water, like, why not? If and the price point is accessible, which is nice. So like, you want to treat yourself or partner, like I'm trying to get everybody to put the bath soak in their stocking stuffers this year, and I'm like, do your friend or yourself or your mom or your roommate a favor and like show.
Yeah, yeah. I've never been one for baths, and it's always like, use these bath bombs and all these crazy things. And I'm like, I don't want to use any of that because I don't want any of that going up my vagina, and I don't want to deal with that later.
Yeah.
So it's just like the perfect thing, and
Yeah.
it made the shoot really fun.
Yay, fun. I'm so glad. That's amazing.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And also, thank you for joining me here today. Do you have anything else that you want to add or talk about before we go?
No, it's been such a pleasure. It's so nice to be able to talk about, both companies together as one, and really that these things are all connected, and it's so important to us. And, we just hope to open up conversations more. We answer everything. We're a very small team. And so when people have questions, or if they try the products or just want to know more about us, like, we totally encourage it. We love to learn from our community. We love to grow and provide more information to them, and like be given homework and use our specialists to help answer people's questions. And just, it's totally what makes us. And I'm really excited to be able to share that and talk to you. You've been such an incredible collaborator. It's so amazing to see, like what you've done with your brand and how you've been able to diversify in the last couple of months and provide all this cool education. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. I love working with you guys. Like you said, you're so responsive and you're so dedicated to this work. And I love that. And I feel like we're definitely simpatico on that.
I'm all sad. I'm like, oh God, I just feel like.
Yeah. Virtual hugs.
Yes.
All right. So if you all want to learn more about Momotaro, please visit momotaroapotheca.com or oceana.com. And bonus, use the code Look Down There for a discount and get yourself some of that sex oil, bath oil, salves, whatever you need. We got to get through this winter, people.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right? So you can also find us at lookdownthere.com or on Instagram at ilookdownthere. And you can find me on Instagram as well at Michelle Lamore. And finally, I have a class coming up on January 9th. You can find out about my class, Pussy Confidence, starting up on January 9th, 2021. Seems like it's forever away, but it's not. It's just around the corner. So come and join me. Learn more about that at michellelamore.com/PC. And finally, just a reminder to grab a mirror and look down there.